podcast here. I hope you're all well. If you are listening to the podcast, to the audio, then thanks very much. And we do actually record this live for those of you who aren't aware. And we do encourage you to try and come and join us live, because you get to meet the guests and speak to them and ask questions, and also a great networking possibility, because when you do come, then I can bring your kind of like Facebook logo or YouTube logo up onto the screen and your questions. But yeah, if you can't make it, it's at 8 o'clock UK time. Every Tuesday, but if you can't make it, then appreciate you listening to the audio. It'd be even nicer if you could leave a nice review and a rating, particularly on Google Podcasts. You can also listen to us on YouTube, and you can join in the comments from YouTube, and also come to the Sports Therapy Association Facebook page. You don't have to be a member of the STA. You're welcome to come along and mix and hang out and meet the guests and the other people who come to join us live. So there we go. That's what we're all about. My name is Matt Phillips of One Chat Live. And first of all, I must thank Mike Grice once again for stepping in last week to be the host with the most. It was very kind of you. Thanks, Mike. And it was a really good session, if I say so myself. I'm going to put myself out of a job here. But it was a really good Q&A where Mike and Gary, founder of the STA, had a Q&A, something we should probably do at least once every couple of months, because there were some brilliant questions coming from people who joined us live. I'm going to read out a few of the questions, just at the risk of keeping my guest tonight a little bit bored, but it was just really useful information, I feel, for soft tissue therapists. There was, how do you cope with the pressures of moving back to face-to-face appointments, which was really interesting. And we forget about that. A month of doing kind of like maybe virtual consultations, or for some people not doing anything at all because they were too stressed out, suddenly back to maybe 3, 4, 5 face-to-face consultations, people a day, real life. Which is total different kind of like shock to the nervous system, isn't it? So that was really interesting to listen to. How many hours of reading research came up again? Should therapists do a month? That's well worth listening to. Just a reminder that at the Sports Therapy Association, Gary, the founder, is very much into looking at different forms of CPD. You don't necessarily have to pay for some big flashy course and travel across the country. Even listening to these podcasts can be down as CPD hours if you show what you've learned from it. And indeed, we've got a template now on the STA website where you can download that and put in anything you read or watch which improves you as a therapist, counts towards continued professional development. So that was a really good question to listen to. There was face-to-face. Is it safe to do face-to-face first aid qualification? Which was good as well. This was an interesting one that I listened to with great fascination. How can we compete ethically in our marketing with the huge amount of misleading advertising out there? That's a massive one. How does some humble little sports therapist or sports massage therapist compete with all of these kind of like endless pot of money marketing agencies pushing twaddle out there? It's very tricky. How do you do it without playing the same game? And then also the last question for the hour session was, does a sports therapy degree make you more employable? Which links in quite nicely with what we're going to talk about tonight. Good segue there. So tonight, I'm very happy to bring you once again back from November 2020. She's been around since then. She's not like going to cryogenic storage or something, but no, she's been very active. You all know already, Jemma Oliver of the Physio Therapist Support Group was back in episode 2027. What are essential health services anyway? So that was a flashback to the past, where we were all told you can see people as long as it's essential to their health. And it was like, oh, what's essential? Is massage essential? They need it, otherwise they have a nervous breakdown. Is that essential? So that was a really interesting session. You can go back to listen to that with Jemma. So Jemma is back, which is great. And joining her is Andy Hosgood, founder of Elevate Your Clinic, which we'll hear about very shortly. And I think that's all of the stuff out the way. And also with this is going to be Gary Benson, founder of the Sports Therapy Association. So I think that's all that's out the way. Just making sure we're live in Facebook. We are. Catherine Reimer, how are you doing? Just going to show. So those of you listening to the podcast, you can't see, but I've got Catherine's comment here up on the screen. It says, hi, everyone. Hope you had a nice break, man. Well, thank you. Thanks for saying that, Catherine. I did. It didn't rain all the time. It was camping. It was a great experience. I've never been in a tent I could stand up in before. I thought tents were all small. My tent had 4 rooms. I could put the car in it. It was ridiculous. Borrowed it off a physio, obviously. It wasn't mine. They own far much more than me. Anyway, Stephen Waterson, nice to see you as well. And everyone else filling up the room. That's great. Right. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up our guests in no particular order. Although she did tell me she'd be very annoyed if I didn't bring up at first. So here's Jem. Hey, Jem, how you doing?
Hello, Matthew. How are you?
Right. I'm all right. Better than you, I think. I hear you've been a bit stressed, yeah?
I've had an eventful few weeks, but much better. Much better. I've got a lovely new job, so yeah, it's all good.
Oh, fantastic. We'll hear about that in a sec. But first, just at the risk of ruining your day, let's bring up Andy. Is Andy Hosgood? Hey, Andy, how you doing, mate?
And Matt, you all right?
I've never met you in person before. Have I? Have we met in person?
If I said yeah now, would that put you in a bad predicament?
It would just,
No.
it would just confirm what my wife says all the time. You've got a brain like a sieve, but I don't think that. But it's nice to meet you in person, Andy. I've heard about you and seen your work a lot, so it's nice to meet you in person. And also, couldn't do this without him. Founder of the STA, Gary Benson. Hi, Gary.
Yeah, evening, Matt. Hi, all.
Thanks for last week. That was really good. It's really good.
Yeah,
I love listening back to it.
I quite like those when there's no sort of agenda to them, and when we were just Mike and I were just like having a chat with people listening in, and it was good. Yeah, some great questions.
There was some reminders there. I'm just thinking what you mentioned. There was something about moving from PayPal. That was something that came up in the beginning. There was a bit of housekeeping, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Do you want to repeat that tonight?
Yeah. So what we've done is after the last 2 years of the clunkiness of PayPal and the problems it's caused us with automated renewals and communication issues, we've moved away from PayPal and we've moved on to Stripe as of yesterday, and we are just experiencing some teething problems with Stripe. So watch this space. I think it's not teething problems with them; it's us learning how to use it. But yeah, we're slap bang in the middle of a really busy renewal period at the moment. So we are checking CPD statements, first aid qualifications, highest industry qualifications, etc., issuing certificates. So yeah, it's taking up all of our time at the moment.
Fantastic. Right. Okay. Right. So, Jem and Andy, thanks for joining us this evening. Appreciate your time. Obviously, all our guests do this for free. There's no monetary passing at all whatsoever. It's all the goodness of putting the good word out there. Did you not read? You didn't read that email, did you? You know, when that font's got very small at the end. That tiny. You know,
I didn't get the memo.
No. Andy did. He came back to me and said, "What? Are you joking?" No, I appreciate you guys giving up your time. I'm looking forward to this a lot. Looking forward to it. It's a really good topic, and I've seen that. I know it's a good topic because Anna chimes in and goes, "Great topic," in her Italian accent and puts thumbs up everywhere. So it's a winner. Just make sure you keep the next month free because the Massage Collective will want you for the same topic probably in the next few weeks. So make sure you're not too busy. But anyway, so Jem, how's it going with the Physio and Therapist Support Group? Has that been keeping you busy as well?
Yeah, very well. Everyone's very well behaved now. It sort of runs itself, which is, I think, down to the success of the moderation and the lovely team that I've got, but also because it's now been running for 18 months and it's conducive, and it's lovely to actually have it. There's a self-running, self-sufficient sort of stuff. There's things that we can do, and there's plans to do bits and pieces. But now I'm really happy. It's to be still successful and still growing and still talking about relevant stuff 18 months in is really good, and I'm just really pleased that everybody is using it in that way as a support network, and as things evolve and change as they have done millions of times. It's really nice that it is still being used, and this is one of the topics that comes up quite a lot, or it's one of the reasons I wanted to sort of talk about it, because we get themes and movements and thinking from different people in different professions, and that's what I really like about the group. So
that's the greatest thing I see about the group when I'm in there having a little look, is because you've got so many therapists now in there, because it's a physio and therapist support group, which was a great move. It's just broken down those walls, and you're doing a little research, really, aren't you? You're seeing like, what do people want, what do people need, you're encouraging people to talk.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons we really do want to talk about this, because it is something that is a problem. Recruitment is an issue for various reasons, whether you're looking for work or you're changing or you're actually trying to employ people. So it is important. It comes up a lot in the group, not just our group, but many, I think. So fantastic.
And you got a signature of approval there from Emily saying it's an amazing space for all professions. There you go. Physio and therapist.
That's why she's part of the moderating team, because we pay.
Don't say that. You've ruined it. I'll edit that out of the podcast, don't worry. These amateurs. And Andy, nice to meet you finally face to face. Andy, how are you doing?
And you too, Matt. Very well, thank you. Thanks for having us on.
No worries. Give me a little introduction to Elevate Your Clinic.
Yeah, so Elevate Your Clinic was a brain idea from myself and Phil, who is a non-therapist. So he's an out-of-industry expert who has been a leadership and management coach for many, many years, but especially now specialises in small business. And it was the idea for when I was trying to grow my therapy business 20 years ago, when I was setting out, where do you go for support? You know, everything was elite for you know, business coaches that charge loads of money that didn't understand the industry at all. So the idea of Elevated Clinic, we grew our business to the size where I was very fortunate, like that classic thing, I could step back and have people like Jem doing all the hard work for us. And then and it was a space where, how do we help as many therapists who get the information and the education they need to build the business they want? And that was what it was all about. And it started off as a coaching, like a one-to-one coaching thing, but then we've built our own online academy now. So the idea is now people can kind of learn as they go, really, and can dip in. It can either be used as a problem-solving thing. So if you've got an issue in your business, you can go and have a look at some educational stuff on how to solve the problem. Or if you're new to business, or you're like me and a bit of a geek and want to know as much as you can, then there's an order of which you can, for me, build all the good foundations to build a therapy business from a startup all the way through to, you know, multi-million pounds if you chose to go that way and get giddy.
Fantastic. Great stuff. And the exact website for that, normally I'd bring up a splash screen here, yeah, but if people want to go and check that out, is it just Elevate Your Clinic?
Yeah, elevateyourclinic.com. Yeah.
.com. It's a .com. Fantastic. Okay then. Right. So let's get into the topic, which was, well, I've actually had to modify all of our adverts now because it's the longest topic we've ever had to fit into the advert. Integration of sports therapists into private practice and physiotherapist roles. Way too many characters, but I couldn't think of a way of shorting it down. What tell us, Jem, you came up with this, which is always great. I love when guests came up with suggestions because it's something that's on your mind and obviously you're passionate about and you've been thinking about for a while, like you've already said. Give us a kind of a basic introduction to why you think we should be talking about that.
I think, as I did say, it is mentioned quite a lot. We've got a lot of people, specifically within the Facebook group, looking for staff at the moment. We see the adverts all the time. And again, not just in our group, but many. And I think going through the changes that everyone's going through, especially now people are, you know, opening up a bit more and changing practices or developing new ways, there seems to be a bit of a shortage. Now, I am a physiotherapist. But there is a reason that the group is called Physio Therapist Support Group. I come from a sports medicine background where everybody sort of works together anyway, and I work with lots of different professionals. And I've been fortunate to work in a lot of private clinics, and I choose to work in a lot of private clinics which actually have a mix of professionals in them for whatever, you know, for whatever reason. And it works really well. And I just think, you know, if there seems to be a bit of a shortage, and we know there isn't a shortage of professionals out there. You know, there's lots of people looking for work. So why are clinics and people struggling to find professionals to fill these roles? Because it appears that they are. Okay, the group, there's a good number in our group, so we do get the themes running through it, and there's lots of recruitment stuff at the moment. You speak to people and it's difficult. Now, there is a side of it from an argument point of view, saying from a recruitment point of view it's very difficult. I don't think we've got that right in the industry, but there is also an argument to say, are people or employers getting it right? You know, are they looking for the right sort of people, and why in some cases are they looking specifically for physios or role specific things, when actually there's a lot of people that are very qualified and have the skill set to provide that service, but they're not a physio. They may be a sports therapist, or they may be you know, a graduate sports rehabilitation person. And so that's where it comes from. You know, there's lots and lots of very qualified and very capable people. We all have a mix and a range of skills. Do we need to start looking at it slightly different, rather than just saying advertising for a physio or an osteopath or whatever? You know, does that need to be different? Now, I think, yes, physiotherapist, you know, is a protected title. We're not saying that people should start to call themselves different things. I wouldn't call myself a sports therapist, for example, but it's about looking at what you need to fill in your clinic. What's the type of person that you're looking for? What's the skill set that you're looking for? And using that to advertise for people, rather than maybe a physio or a specific role set.
Why do you think? Well, if you hear this, then why? It's just Gemma's got 12 dogs on the couch behind her. If you're not watching the show, then you just have to imagine you've got little Gemma in the middle and about 12 chihuahuas, I think, sitting around her. It's like Paris Hilton, she does. So yeah, who are these people looking just for physios? Are they physios themselves? And why do you think they're confining it to physios? What are their preconceptions?
Not sure. I think some of it is a traditional approach. I think some people are, are physios, and they want that sort of people. They want people in similar sort of a skill set. I think there's an education thing. I think there's a cultural thing to people. That's what they've always done and how they've always worked. I think there is an element of an insurance point of view. I think although people are moving away from private medical insurance now, as we know, and it's probably a theme in itself for various reasons. There is limitations, and I understand that from a HPCP point of view, where certain professionals can't practice or see people because they need certain registrations. Fine, but private practice is just that. And if you have a varied number of different types of staff, you can have a varied number of different types of clients. So I think my personal opinion is we just need to start talking about it. We need to start asking these questions, mainly because there seems to be a bit of a shortage of people being able to recruit really good therapists into their practice, and that's what we've seen. And so why is that? And do you need to then therefore look for somebody to fulfill the role rather than looking for a title, is my question. So I think it comes down to employers, and also there's lots of people with different skill sets that are suited to different environments. I'm going through a change in different career path at the moment. I decided that one route as an FCP wasn't for me, and I wanted to go back into private practice, having thought the exact opposite 2 years ago. So there may be people also thinking, well, can I work in those sort of environments? And if I was a sports therapist sat at home looking for work, and I see lots of adverts for physio, I may be sat there going, well, could I do that role? And does it put them off? Are we missing, or are employers missing, a massive group of people that are incredible at providing a really good service for patients and clients within their clinic? And I think we may be missing a trick by just being very specific. And I'm not saying we all should sort of blur the lines and start calling each other different titles, but we are all very good at what we do, and I think it would be good to see it a bit more expanded within the profession.
Okay then, Gary, you spend a lot of your time picking up on people who are advertising for physios, whether maybe they could be kind of like the fact they could be missing on a pool of particularly well-skilled other therapists like sports therapists. What do you think the reason is? Is it their fault, our fault, mixture of the two, or what can we do to stop it?
I think it's multifaceted. And just as a point, going back to last week's chat with Mike Grice, Mike did a great job of explaining how his multidiscipline clinic works, how he thought it might work initially, the changes he had to make, and how it now runs itself really with the multidiscipline practitioners. But the people I'm talking to, and my name's mentioned quite a lot on Jem's group. When people are looking to recruit and they say they're looking for a sports therapist, and I get private messages, and I engage in conversation with these people, and as Jem identified, sometimes they're looking for a clone of themselves, and a sports therapist might not be the best person to fit that role, because we're not physiotherapists, we are not allied health professionals, and as a part of that, we are not legally or ethically allowed to diagnose. We clinically reason and assess, and we treat what we find. But one of my frustrations has been that when I'm contacted by a physiotherapy clinic looking for a graduate sports therapist, and I say, what specification, what's the personal and professional specification you want? And they say, I want them to do everything that I can do, but I only want to pay them half the wages of a physio. And it boils my blood sometimes, but I'm very diplomatic, and I always try and put across the point that a successful a graduate sports therapist, let's just take it as an example with some simple maths, that if a graduate sports therapist works in their own clinical environment and they have 20 clients a week, charging between £40 and £50 per person, that's between £800 and £1,000 a week. So that's between £41,600 and £52,000 a year. Now, why would they be attracted to a multidiscipline clinic when they're already working autonomously with a referral network in place, for 20,000 or 18,000? Because they're the sort of wages that are, appropriate for somebody working in Tesco's on the veg department, like my son did, not for a graduate sports therapist who spent 3 years and close on 50 grand of time and money commitment to get their qualification.
Good points. Andy, you've heard. Reflect.
Yeah. I have to be honest, it's a topic that both me and Jem have spent quite considerable time discussing, because I've had a multidisciplinary background in my whole clinic so I've always been 50-50 physios to either sports therapists and sports rehabilitators from day one. That's how we built our clinic. So for me, that model's always been the norm and what we should do. And it was only, I guess, how, when I opened my clinic, no one would talk to each other because everyone was competitors. So no one could share what was going on. So I never really understood when I started explaining to others that we have this 50-50 split, that people, what they like,
like a being from another planet. It's crazy.
It's an interesting factor. Well, the end of the day, how I've always judged people as therapists is, if you can come to an interview and I like you, you can communicate well with the client and the customer's going to like you, which is fundamentally got to be skill 101, right? Because, if you're going to try and get someone to comply with a load of exercises which are boring and going to ask them to try and do 3 times a day, you're going to have some decent rapport skills. And then on the clinical assessment that you do, you assess for that. So you would assess on the basis, in my opinion, of somebody that can actually assess well and understand what's going on and create the correct rehabilitation plan, whatever that means. Now, if they happen to be a sports therapist, happen to be a physiotherapist, I've never really cared, because at the end of the day, for me, they're just John. And that's been my whole analogy that I've always kind of gone through, and it's interesting when you listen, when I obviously have a nosy in Jem's group and have a look at what people are going on about. But in any other industry in the world, we recruit on the basis of the skill set they've got to fulfill the role. So you would write a job description and the roles and the skills that do that, and then you recruit based on them, not what they've done or what their title is. So it's an industry thing as well, isn't it, in the therapy world, that a physio then goes, well, I've got a physio business, so I need to recruit a physio. Whereas, but if you want your marketing in your business, you're not going to recruit a physio to do marketing, are you? So I think that the thing is, you've got to be really smart. And for me, when we work with a business and in the recruitment thing, one of the first things we get everybody to do is to just define what is the role that you're actually recruiting for and where would they sit within your business and organization. And based on those skills, actually, which one would be suitable? And hopefully, what I'm seeing anyway, and you'd be interesting to know what you guys are thinking, but the tide is turning. And I think people are now starting to can look at that more, and definitely, hopefully, people are running their businesses more like businesses rather than just going, oh, I've done all right, let's just do what I've always done. So hopefully, I think the tide is definitely changing. And my experience of everybody I know that have got sports therapists in their business, I know a lot of sports therapists that have got really successful businesses as well. The irony is that they're starting to recruit physios, which I think is good. So, because they want the kind of the Bupa contracts. So exactly. If you want a Bupa contract, you go and then recruit a physio, don't you?
Yeah. The tide is changing, and I think it needs to change. And I think a lot of things are now coming out as an industry. We've had to change, through an awful pandemic. We are coming out the other side of it now. It has taken a lot longer and been very, very challenging. I'm sorry about the barking. I'll sort him out in a minute.
That's fine.
But it is changing. It needs to change. It needs to change. I very nearly walked away from physio 2 years ago because for whatever reason, and at a different podcast at a different time, I just got disillusioned with physiotherapy in general. It wasn't what I wanted to do anymore. It wasn't what I was about, and it was very frustrating. Now there's other factors, linked into that as well, and I now have come through the other side and different types of physio work and consultation work and triage work, and realize what I want to do. And it is like Andy said, I'm a people person. I like treating people. I like diagnosing, and I have now found a very good clinic in the north that I love to work in, which is Summit Physio, which is not a plug, but it is, and I think I say that because, and I say this specifically the north, and it's not a dig, but obviously living in London, you have an abundance of a lot of, very, very good establishments, but some of them are very, very good. And again, I worked at Octopus Clinic with Lucy McDonald, that we all know, and that again was a lovely multidisciplinary clinic. There was osteos, there was physios, we had podiatrist interest and stuff, and it was very forward thinking, and I love that. There isn't as much of that up here. There really isn't. And I'm not saying everybody is like that, but I think there's a lot more sort of traditional setups, I would say. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the sort of clinic that you want to run. But things are moving, things are changing. We need to, in my opinion, if I had, if I won the lottery tomorrow, I would set up a movement space. I would set up a studio with maybe a couple of beds, not a couple of rooms where people get shut in a room. I want to create a space for people to move, because effectively is that, that's what we need to do. That's what the research says. We know how it works clinically, but you need the right people in there. And I just don't think that we are thinking enough or forward thinking enough sometimes to actually start to push this on a bit, for all the reasons that you've just said. There's lots of people, sports therapists, sports rehabbers, that are very good at working in a team. I want to work in that environment, and I'm sure lots of other therapists sort of do as well. So yeah, it needs to change, and it is, but I think it needs a push.
I'm going to have a pause here just because there's 4 of us on the screen tonight. I've got other questions, but if you've got anything you want to come back with, or indeed if anyone's listening here has got any experience of working in a multidisciplinary clinic, or maybe you've been turned down because they said, I'm looking for a physio. You're not a physio. I thought you were a physio. And if you've got any personal experience there, then do share it with us, people with it tonight. Just saying hello to Clinic Al. Is your name Al? It's a really cool handle if your name is Al. Clinic Al, or is it Clinic AI? Are you real, or are you just a robot? Oh, we'll soon find out. Anyway, thanks for joining us, Clinic Al. And hi, Kelly Clinton says, totally agree, Jemma. The one thing I want to ask Jemma, is when you say we, like we've got to change, who's the we? That's not an easy question, but who is it? Who do we?
I'll stick my neck out and say physiotherapy profession. I think, and I'm not saying, everybody's got it right and everybody's got it perfect, but I think there's a lot of, again, sticking my neck out, traditionalists out there, and Andy had a conversation with, Catherine in the group, who posed a great question where, yes, physiotherapy is a protected title. We're not saying that it isn't, and I'm not saying that, people should start pretending that they are physios, which they never ordinarily do. But I think it's about scope of practice, and it's about skill set, and it's about, a personality and what you have to offer, rather than looking at the person and what they bring to the clinic, rather than their title. So I think when I say we, I mean the physio profession as a whole. Now, if you want to do, like we just mentioned, lots of insurance work that need HPCP registrations, and that's where you want to go, then, obviously there's restrictions in who can see those clients and those patients. If I was setting up a clinic tomorrow, I would want the person and the people to be good with rapport and people skills and have good clinical skills, and want to work in a developing environment, because not every physio patient wants to be treated by the same person. I'll treat somebody very different than all of you, but actually what that patient needs is maybe something slightly different. And I think we need to be a bit more flexible in our approach to that, we being the physio profession as a whole, I think.
How much of physiotherapy is kind of NHS hospital based, where it's kind of really important to have that massive big physiotherapy input because you're working in different wards and learning about stuff which sports therapists don't even cover? How many physios are in that environment compared to a private practice? Do you know?
I don't, and that's a question that's actually come up quite a lot. Actually, we'll have to speak to the man and the stat man legend, Jack Chew. Will probably have some ideas, but I've no idea.
I need a short answer. I can't ask Jack. I need to know now.
Anybody knows? No, and I don't know, and I think there's a misconception, especially from patients. This is the other, side of the coin, is that patients clump us all together anyway. They walk into a clinic, and I think maybe from a traditional point of view, I think everybody is a physio, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a podiatrist or a nurse or whatever, same as you go to a GP. But that's an education thing, that's something that we have got wrong. The other thing to say is, I say this a lot when I explain the difference between sports therapists and sports rehabbers and physio, is that physios take 3 years, obviously, to train, or 4 years in some cases, but we cover respiratory, neuro, care of the elderly, paediatrics, and everything within our training. The MSK side of physiotherapy is, for argument's sake, a third, whereas from a sports rehabber and a sports therapist, you spend 3 years doing what physios do in a year, for argument's sake. That for me is massive, and that's where I've always, like Andy and a lot of people, worked. And I've trained a lot of people in London, for example, and worked as a mentor for lots of sports therapists and sports rehabbers, because they're very good. They're very good at what they do. Their diagnostic skills are very good. Their clinical skills are very good. Their rehab skills are amazing. And there's lots of amazing physios out there as well. But actually, I think, like any profession, we can get a bit lazy. I was certainly guilty of it for a long time, got a bit disillusioned with private practice, just doing the same thing over and over again. And it's only coming out of it and coming back in, I've actually refreshened everything up again. But, not every physio goes into MSK therapy. There's lots of different sides of it. Now, that's where I think we get sort of issues with CSP registration and people getting frustrated from a private practice point of view. But again, for argument's sake, and to back the CSP, not everybody in the country is an MSK physiotherapist. There's lots of different facets to that profession. So I don't know what the numbers are, but I think we forget that, yes, it's important to get private practice recognised, but we are one small part of the physio world, if that makes sense. So.
Can I jump in there as well, if you thought it? Because I think there's two things from that. I think firstly, I think it's always interesting from a business owner's perspective, what their service is, and if they're so. Jem said she's very rehab focused and loves that, which is kind of ours. Which I think that's why she likes ours. Big open space and looks like a mini CrossFit gym with Pilates reformers in the middle of it. So for us, people that are used to being active and like exercise and all this they're going to always suit our methodology. So a sports therapist, sports rehabilitator will suit that and fit in with that well, if that makes sense, because it's that's our out of clinical style. So whereas if your style of physio isn't always that, you're not rehab focused, then again, you might not want that person either, would you? So again, it goes to, for me, it always comes down to an employer and understanding what it is that they want the service to be like in their business, and then it comes down to picking who's the best skilled for that. Because if you've got somebody who's fantastically diagnostic, like at diagnosing exactly what part of the supraspinatus tendon's impinged or whatever, okay, but can't rehab it, then is that the right person for you in your business model? Again, it comes down to that. And it'd be interesting if anyone fancies commenting, how many sports therapists feel comfortable going to a physiotherapy company for a role? In my experience, what was interesting is definitely changing. But early on, when we had sports therapists and sports rehabs applying for MSK therapy roles, of which that's what we recruit on, they were definitely a little bit more self-confident, or lack of self-confidence in the way they were, because we were physios. And then I had to tell everyone, actually, I started off as a sports rehabilitator and then did physio. So I kind of went from one way to the other. So again, it would be interesting how people feel about, from that perspective. And so that people are recruiting these people, recruiting into the sports therapists, or thinking about it, how they do things differently to make people feel more comfortable as well. That'll be an interesting thought.
If I can come in there, Matt, as well, because, Andy made a really good point when we was doing the sound check that, his practice is MSK and rehab. Now, he wouldn't advertise or take on a pelvic health physio because it doesn't fit his remit, his clinical remit. Now, the same with the sports therapist. And again, I'll refer back to the question last week about, are we marketing to get the right type of client? Now, are we marketing as an employer to get the right type of therapist? And for somebody just to say they want a physiotherapist, they need to then, expand on that and reinforce Gemma's point that, is it neuro? Is it geriatric, pediatric? Is it, stroke rehab? But it's the same with a sports therapist, because there's no continuity or standardization across the education program, so that, a sports therapist, from Wales, for example, may be heavily biased towards soft tissue therapy, where the lead tutor is that way biased. Somebody from Scotland might be pitchside trauma, and somebody from York might be, strength and conditioning biased. So it's to pick up on Andy's point, it's about advertising exactly what you want, and it's the skill set. So write the job description first, forget about the title. And Jack Chooser, we had Jack talking about the imposter syndrome that we all suffer from time to time, and the title's unimportant. It's whether that person fits with your team, has the right personality, can build that therapeutic alliance with the client so that they're happy, and whether they can do the job, not necessarily their allegiance to a membership association or a title.
100%.
Very good.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Well, we're all sold. How do you say it to everyone else? That's the thing. I agree. Yeah.
I think that's what we're trying to do now, isn't it? We're trying to sell it to the other
And
people.
that is the question. And I've written that on my pad. What do we do? How do we, and I think we have broken, there's more talking going on now. I think because we've had to talk and club together and all kind of go back to a bit native and all sort of get together to get over the pandemic. But we use that now, use the cohesion and the talking and the difference to actually move on as a profession, in whatever profession you are. That's why it's important to me, and Andy, we've been discussing it quite a lot. We need to see what we can do to start to change it. And the job description, the job spec, and thinking about maybe what you want in your service is the key thing, I think, at the moment.
Do you not think, though, that, web chats like this, groups like ours, which are, we, allow multidisciplinary practitioners in our GEMS group as well, the amount of talking that we have all done amongst ourselves, our own profession and different professions in the last 18 months is tremendous. And my fear is that as we go back to normality, whatever guise that may take, is we stop this collaborative approach. We stop talking and we go back to, sometimes traditionalist but elitist statements that are coming out from various sectors of the industry, not just physiotherapy looking down on sports therapists, but sports therapists, being elitist towards soft tissue therapists. So, and there was a point made earlier about, when we all started in clinical practice, we saw John Smith down the road as being our biggest rival. When that's never the case. John Smith down the road may have a totally different expertise and skill set, which we can use to our advantage by signposting our client where we're not confident or not permitted or not qualified to work with. Say, well, go and see John Smith down the road, and then you build that therapeutic alliance with your competitors, rivals. I've always, even in my previous business, which was totally unrelated, I had an alliance with all of my so-called competitors, so that we knew where we were working, we knew what was going on, and it was a sort of a team approach. And I think if we lose that, then that'll be a sad day.
Yeah, I agree. And I think to answer your question, what do we do? I'll put my head out there. I don't mind being slightly controversial. I think people are going to get left behind, because I do think things are changing. I do think, it was sort of moving in that direction anyway. Every aspect of healthcare has definitely changed in the last 18 months for the better in some aspects. And I think that people will roll with it, Gary. I think people that are open enough to sort of think about their practice different, whatever discipline they are, and take on this cohesive and collaborative working and thinking, actually, maybe I could have an osteo in my clinic, maybe I could have a chiro, maybe I could have some soft tissue work instead of doing lots of manual therapy as a physio practitioner. Maybe I could, work with a sports therapist to do some rehab stuff. Why not? And I do think if you're not going to move with that and reform, in for the better, I do think we're going to get left behind, you know, in the next sort of 10 years ago. Now, that's my own personal thought, you know, whether that comes out or not, I don't know. But I think it would be a shame if it all sort of stopped. But I don't think it will. I think it is changing.
Do you think that and I don't know how big this is, because obviously we all kind of follow the same people on Twitter and all involved in the same kind of podcasts and stuff, but the movement towards being more evidence informed, do you think that's a positive thing in helping break down these traditional barriers? Because normally you'd say, oh, don't a chiropractors, they're just going to be clicking spines, and osteopaths is going to think they're going to cure everything with manipulations, sports therapist is going to be massaging the hell out of everyone, and so on. A physio is just going to be handing out exercises from 1990, kind of black and white. If we're all kind of like on the same sort of evidence informed page and slowly kind of funneling our stuff down, we're going to be more kind of aligned. Does that help? Or am I wrong in thinking that physiotherapy is becoming more evidence informed? Because I see the bashing sometimes that Adam Meakins gets, for example, from other physios. And sometimes I think it's all just a drop in the ocean, because there's lots of things that all these professions do which are not evidence informed. What do you think?
I think you just hit the nail on the head, really. I think you just mentioned a perfect scenario for private practice. You know, you've just mentioned 6 or 7 different skill sets or roles that, okay, you're not going to have an environment where you can walk in and have a choice of whatever you want to see. But like Gary said, why can't we just be a little bit more open about, you know, being evidence informed? And yes, clinically, we all need to be. But I had a conversation in, you know, my old FCP group recently where somebody was very, very research based, and they were quoting papers for every single question that came up on the clinical group. You know, my question to him was, if we only ever did absolutely everything that was evidence-based, we would never move forward. And I'm not, you know, again, another podcast for another time, which I probably do want to be involved with, is that I just think we get too bogged down on the fact that everything has to have a you know, a randomized control trial attached to it, or we don't do it at all. A lot of the stuff Adam you know, says, you know, I completely agree with. I don't always agree with the way he goes about it, but he, you know, he makes some really good points. And I don't like the fact on Twitter where, in fact, if you don't have 10 papers to do it, then you shouldn't do it at all. Because what we're talking about here is recruiting into a network of physios and therapists that have a great skill set. That skill set is different and changing. I love looking at all the people that are really good at research and looking at reading the research, and I do help use it to inform my practice. But I also use the patient in front of me to inform what's going to work for them. And I don't think that gets sort of talked about enough. So I don't know if I've answered your question specifically, but I think for me, it's very much the case of, yes, we need to be evidence informed, but we need to use our skills and available and what the patient needs in front of us as well. And we need to be open to do that, I think.
I think also, if I can add, that if we talk about different skills, so, you know, Matt, you mentioned quite a lot of different practitioners that could all probably treat a certain condition, for example. Are we saying that not every body person responds the same way, do they? So you might even find in your own organisation, for somebody responds better to a different practitioner in your own organisation. So having clones, I think, Gary, you mentioned someone's looking for a clone of themselves. You know, you're arguing missing the boat, aren't you? Because there's people in my organisation that are better at certain things than me. So if someone comes in and they're a certain condition, I might refer them to one of my own team on the basis that they're highly skilled at that area more than me. So actually, for a good patient customer experience, it's better they see them than it is than I see them. So I think having a variable skill set in a team anyway is actually good clinical practice in like a multidisciplinary team, but also it's a good business practice, isn't it? Because you're getting the right person to see the right, in my opinion anyway, you know. But if you've got clones of themselves, you've only got one way of treating somebody. If it doesn't work, then what do they do?
It's having the confidence to be able to do that, Andy, as well, isn't it? And I agree, you know, with our clinic and yours where I work, you know, I work with, you know, with different people, and in Lucy's that I worked in London, we had osteos and physios, and it would work vice versa. You know, I've seen a few people in my, you know, in Summit, you know, over the past few weeks or so, who I've done as much as I can clinically. They now just need to get really strong, and they need to do some really good Pilates. So I've sent them on to our fantastic Pilates instructor that we have within the clinic. And, you know, the patient likes that. I don't, you know, I'm self-employed. Yes, I'd love to see patients lots and lots and get loads of money, but it's not about that. You know, I've done as much as I can. All I would then be doing is lots of rehab, when actually we have a really good Pilates specialist who can get this person's back really good. So I've now referred them on to them, and they're going to start seeing her. And I did that the same in London, you know, with an osteopath. You know, I'm okay at backs. It's not my favourite thing. I'm a peripheral joint, typical sports sort of physio, you know, and I would refer to the osteopath and say to the patient, I think you would be better with this person, but it's having the confidence to do that. And some people don't like doing it. Some people don't want to do it. You know, I don't know. The patient's like, yeah, brilliant. You know, and if you explain your reasoning, then fine. And then vice versa, the osteopath would be like, clinically, they're really good now. Can you go through some rehab? Can you do some Pilates? But it comes from confidence. You know, that's, you know, would I have done that 10 years ago as a new-ish physio and being a bit unsure? Mate, I don't know. You know, and that the other sort of things where if you have more of a cohesive environment, you develop that with newer graduates in whatever the profession, hopefully they will have the confidence to go, actually, why don't you go and see Andy, or why don't you go and see Matt? Because actually, I think they'd be able to do that for you.
Yeah, I just think, I mean, that list I rattled off wasn't supposed to be a demonstration of different skills. If anything, I was being a bit cynical in the sense that it was demonstrating skills that probably don't exist. And anyone who is like the names that we give different professions are probably part of the problem, because the names allude to things which have since been disproved. Like if you go back to why an osteopath is called an osteopath and why a chiropractor is called a chiropractor, and a massage therapist, what they believe massage would do, these names are all kind of leftovers from traditional thoughts and mechanisms of action which probably don't work. And when I meant by evidence informed was, if you've got a multidisciplinary clinic and every single therapist is from a different background, but if they're all really keyed in, for example, to the biopsychosocial element, and we're all facilitators rather than operators, once you've got that evidence that everyone's individual and you've got to work with a person and subjective is more important, that's where you get your hypothesis, and the objective is just to test the hypothesis, which I think a lot of therapists aren't on board with. That they'll just jump in straight with their, I'm an osteopath, I'm going to click this, or a chiropractor, or I'm going to do dry needling. I'm not even going to think about what that person's doing or what their stress is like in their life, because I'm going to stick needles in. All these skills, I think, weaken our strength as a multidisciplinary clinic, because we're all putting our faith into a discipline we've been taught, which is kind of making people better, but not for the reasons we think it is. Yeah. So that's what I meant by being evidence informed. And I think sometimes there is still big difference. And that's probably why physios are worried about taking on somebody who's not a physio, because they're worried that they are going to be thinking, oh, I'm just going to, you know, rub the hell out of this Achilles until it's better.
Do you not think, though, that, you know, our industries, you know, we come from different industries, but I think we're at a massive crossroads now with the opportunity that is coming our way because of the strain on the NHS, you know, during COVID and post-COVID. More people are going to private practice for their assistance, their treatment. And so I think that if we have this multidiscipline approach, something that, you know, 15 years ago, I've probably been against that. But if you look at the diversity of the clients coming in through our doors, they're not all the same. They don't come in with the same musculoskeletal problem. They may have the pelvic health issue. They may have the neurology issue. So I think if we can develop these centers of excellence, irrespective of title, then I think we've got a massive part to play in the health and the well-being of this nation. Can I just answer Sarah Clark's question? Is a sports therapist synonymous with a sports massage therapist, or are they two completely different disciplines? Now, there is quite an easy way of explaining this, that the occupational competencies relating to sports massage alone, there are two. The occupational competencies relating to sports therapy, there are 14. So there are 12 occupational competencies extra to be a sports therapist. And that's why, you know, we at the STA are always mindful of advising our members that if their award, if their certificate, their diploma says sports massage therapist, then they are a sports massage therapist. If they've got a diploma in soft tissue, which is slightly advanced from application of sports massage, then they are a soft tissue therapist. If their diploma, their degree, their foundation degree, or their master says they're a sports therapist, then they are a sports therapist. So ethically, we title ourselves by our award. So I hope that clears that one up for you, Sarah.
But we don't have to, no?
No, we don't have to.
No, that's the problem.
My granny can call herself a sports therapist with no training whatsoever. You know, and our industry, sports therapy, is 30 plus years old. You know, why are we not further on than we are?
Okay, fine. Just having a little look through some other. Thanks for reminding me, Gary, that we're not actually alone. We've got people watching this. Let's have a look. Peter Tang, going back a little bit. Peter Tang says, when recruiting, it's difficult to know what skill sets the different courses teach and what clinical experience they get during their degree. Sports therapy versus GSR versus Scrum courses. With physio courses, we automatically assume a full-rounded teaching and 1,000 clinical hours. Yeah, so that's the problem, isn't it, with just hiring somebody because of the course they've done. It's really looking at the skill sets and the skills which they've. One of the things I noticed when I've worked in multidisciplinary clinics, and I'm biased, obviously, because I'm not a physio and I haven't done physiotherapy. But time and time again in a clinic, not just with physios, also with podiatrists, basically people come from the NHS, was that they weren't equipped to work with or to market themselves, to work with somebody for an hour, to actually have to engage the person, to show that level of empathy, to get them on board, to get them to come back, because they were more used to that kind of, well, they'll be coming back next week anyway for 20 minutes. And for the next 8 weeks, you'll be seeing them. So there was an awful lot of that connection, rapport kind of skill thing, which was missing, which I don't know whether that wasn't taught on the original physiotherapy degree or whether it just disappears as soon as you get into that, just patients lining up. But that's such an important thing of healthcare, isn't it? Getting that communication and getting that trust and that therapeutic alliance. So that's something which I think maybe in MSK sports therapists have got a little bit of a head start on, because they do devote so much more time to kind of personal contact with people and working with the idea you're going to be with them within an hour rather than a rushed kind of 15 minutes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a lot of my skills, and from a personal point of view, come from working in sport, I think. And I was a bit of a people person anyway. I wasn't always this sort of outgoing as a youngster, and definitely not in my 20s. But I had developed it because you do in sport, you sink or swim, and you have to get on with it. So, you know, and you do, and my success in my career in sports medicine has come from my personality, my rapport. Now that nicely moves over to improving me being able to use all of those skills in private practice. So you're right, but that didn't come from the physio degree, you know. And I think my friend is a course lecturer at St George's in London, and they've remodeled, and a lot of courses are doing this now. They are changing and rewriting a lot of, because some physio courses are better than others. But you're right, Matt, they don't teach that. They try and teach the clinical side. And again, I come back to my point, whereas yes, it's well rounded, but we only have 1/3 an MSK sort of teaching, and within that 1/3 you then have to get in all of the things that you mentioned as well. And this, you know, is a medical issue. You know, how many doctors and GPs do we know that are fantastic clinically and could save your life, but have the you know, the personality of a pencil? So it's you know, it isn't just a therapist or a physio or a sports therapy thing, it's nationwide, which comes back to the recruitment point, where look at the person, you know, look at the skill set. What do you want for your clinic? Do you want someone that's just going to sit and get all the diagnosis and be absolutely amazing, spot on clinical diagnostics all the time? Or do you want someone that patients are going to like, they're going to come back, you're going to do a really good job, they're going to be able to offer different services, they're going to be referring on to other people? And this is where I think we do need to think a bit different. There's lots of people that are doing this, but if you are short and you're struggling to recruit people for your physio practice, look at other things, look at other options, look at what else you can do, but recognize the skill set that they've got at the same time, you know.
Can I just, sorry, Matt, following on from what you were saying, I think it's easier to teach the clinical skills than it is than the rapport skills. So I would rather have somebody that comes who's got that natural ability to build rapport and personality. And I think, well, it's in what I found over the last of training people. If they've got that natural ability to build rapport, then we can help guide them along the clinical journey. All right, because everyone's going to. We've recruited graduates for years, so they're never going to be brilliant because they're straight out of university, right? So, but if they've got a personality, we can take them on. You know, we built a brand where 5 or 6 of ours then went on to work in elite sport from working under our guidance, which is kind of where we, you know, that model works for us. But if I get people that are clinically very sound, but actually have got no personality skills, they're actually less effective in private practice. So I would argue skills that you were mentioning before, that you say that, you know, a lot of sports therapists have in abundance, you know, for me, that would be one of the key skills I would look at as a recruiter.
When I don't know if you listened to the edition that we did, but, you know, this is not evidence-based research. We did a bit of a straw poll amongst our members, and we discussed, and this reinforces Andy's point here, that we discussed in a treatment session, let's just say it's an hour for argument's sake, what percentage of the success of that treatment hour is down to the person, the therapist, and what is down to the passive intervention that was selected by the therapist. And it came out that 75% of the success of that treatment was down to the experience, the rapport that the therapist could build, the therapeutic alliance, how they communicated, how they educated, how they listened, and only 25% was down to the bit of sticky tape or the needle or the thumb in the piriformis. And that reinforces the point that we should be looking for people who can talk to people who can listen, people who can reassure, who can decatastrophize what's going on, and not necessarily those clinically excellent people with no social skills.
Good point.
Yeah. I second that. I'm confident and I'm a good therapist. I am not on paper the best physiotherapist out there, you know, clinically. Andy and I have discussed this many a time. I don't know which camp I fall in, Andy, in your company. I don't know whether I'm the rubbish, the person that needs help, or the personality of a pencil. But no, I joke. But I'm not. I'm really not. And I know, you know, I was a mid sort of 50-60%. I scraped a 2-1 on my, you know, degree. I'm good, but I'm good because I'm a people person. I'm good because I listen to people and I have good skills that I've developed and I've worked hard on. But there's lots of people out there that are better than me, I would say, and again in sports medicine, and I was very underconfident as a younger sort of physio working in sport, where people would be able to do all of these fancy techniques which I either couldn't do or didn't want to do. You know, now I've got the confidence to go, well, that's not the way I work, so I don't want to do that. But you know, as a junior physio, I didn't have that. I sort of looked at all these physios that were working and thinking they were amazing, and yes, they were very good at what they were doing, but I've got all of my roles and all of my success from a sports medicine point of view because I can talk to athletes, I can talk to coach. I'm not, you know, I'm not harsh, you know, I'm kind, but I do have a decent level of skill as well. And for me, it's bringing all of that together now to be able to work, you know, very successfully in private practice and build it together. And I love that stat that you've just said about that poll that you did, because I think that's spot on. And I think if we did that across the board, and I might even steal it to do in the group, because it's massive. It is massive, you know. And I think the weight that people put in, especially from a consumer point of view, is you want them to come back, you want them to be happy. They're much more likely to comply if they understand what's going on, and you're going to get that from somebody who can explain themselves and chat to people a bit more, than rather than just saying clinically, yes, I'm spot on, here's your exercises, see you later next. So yeah, I love that.
Right, to round up, as we are at the 9 o'clock hour, most of the downloads probably that we get for this podcast are going to be sports therapists as opposed to people looking to employ physio. So what can sports therapists do on their side of the equation? Should they be answering ads which are asking for physios? Should they be changing their CV to make sure they've got all the skills down there rather than just putting kind of their qualifications? Or what about some hot tips for us to help change this and to aid this integration?
I think one of the problems that we as sports therapists create for ourselves is that we don't know how to describe ourselves. And, you know, a graduate sports therapist, and I speak to, you know, I've spoke probably to 30 people today, 30 members or new applicants, etc. And one of the things I always ask them is, what makes you unique? And they never have an answer for that. You know, if I came to Newport to spend my 50 quid, why would I come and see you? How would you make a connection with me? And you know, a graduate sports therapist will say we're not a sports massage therapist, and yet the first thing you see on their Facebook page or their poster or their business card is sports massage appointments. I think we've got to be better at explaining what we do so that we're not misinterpreted, so people like Sarah can understand the difference between a sports massage therapist and a sports therapist and a sports rehabilitator. So I think our industry needs to be better at explaining what we do. And on our, I don't know if you saw it, Matt, but Emma Wardle put something about what is a sports therapist, and she went on to list the things that she does and the things that she doesn't. And another member had done a comparison between sports therapy and physiotherapy, which was really enlightening that they'd taken the time to do this and put it out to their clients. So, as an industry, we need to do things better. We need to explain what we do better. And I think from employers, they need to understand what our remit is, and if they want to employ us in their multidiscipline clinics, then that's fantastic.
Great stuff.
Yeah, I think they need to ask the question. I think it would be good to ring up, and it comes with confidence, but just if they see adverts, say, look, this is what I do. And as Gary said, I think make sure you put on there what you do. Sometimes we assume, and I do it myself, even recent sort of job hunting and looking around, we looked at my CV even last week and thought, well, that's a bit rubbish. But I think we assume people know what we do. And actually they don't, and put on there what you like doing, what you're good at, what you're passionate about, move away from a traditional CV. There's so many creative ways to do it now, but call up the practices and say, look, I know you're recruiting. This is my skill set. If they say no, they say no. You've not lost anything. I think be a bit bolder. Andy's always got some great tips about CVs and recruitment and stuff. So, and that's what Elevate is good for, especially from an academy point of view. There's ways and there's people out there to help you with this. Don't think that it's just for physios or HPCP or allied health professionals. Be a bit bolder in your approach to these clinics, I think.
And for me, it would be also, Ricky, if you're looking at a job, it's interesting. So if someone is recruiting for a physio, then the first thing I would do as a sports therapist now would look to see if it is a multidisciplinary team. Would I fit into that role anyway? Do your research and go, actually, that I wouldn't suit that. So would you want to work in there anyway? So what's the point?
Yeah. Do you even want to work there?
The thing I say to anybody, if you're trying to recruit now is what you love and what you feel your skill set be in, is it going to be? Would you like to work there? Is that going to suit your environment? So firstly, foremost, if someone came to me and said, look, I know this is your style, you like your rehab, and I've done, like Gary was saying, someone who's got a background in strength and conditioning as a sports therapist, that CV would land in my inbox and be brilliant, because that's what we love to do. So, so again, I think for me, if you're going to apply for a job, make sure that you also research the job that you're applying for to see if it suits you and that your skill set is going to match, because then you can go in and go, look, this is how your business does things. These are the skills that I've got. So I think they mirror. So that would be my big tip, is to really kind of do your evidence and find the job that will suit you too.
Great stuff. And just to reiterate, Jemma, you said there is a bit of a shortage out there, is there? Is there, when people put out recruiting for physios, are they not getting what they need?
Well, again, this is just from, I don't have any stats on this, but if you look at, I don't know, we must be able to grab the amount of marketing posts on the group, but it seems to me at the moment that yes, there is, I don't know if shortage is the right word, but people don't seem to be able to get the people that they want to work in clinics, just from the volume of people that advertise within my own group, and again, I don't know if that's a recruitment issue because there is the people out there and there is people looking for work. But let's keep it talking. There is an issue. So I'm going to throw it back to you, both you and Matt, and I'm going to throw Ollie Coburn on the bus. And we need to do this in our group. This is bigger than sports therapy. It's great to get you on and talk about this, but I think it would be great to do this within our own group and open it up. It's one of the only ways maybe that we can start to promote the services that you have and people know. But let's try and see if we can break down some barriers, because there are some people who won't agree, and that's absolutely fine. But I think we need to have these conversations. So let's get that in. If you both like to come in and do that, I think we'll get Ollie involved and Matt Scarsbrook and see if we can have a bit more of a MDT chat. Shall we do that?
That sounds like a great idea. Yeah, it's always useful, isn't it? Especially getting people who don't agree because we kind of all
Yes.
know we're all kind of on the same page, and we kind of, you know, it'd be great to get the people who
We'll get Matt
come up with some
Scarsbrook in there.
objections.
He'll ruffle a few feathers. And he'll get some
That's to
people.
see what's happened to him. I still take part of the blame for that. I think I've created a bit of a monster. I gave him too much time at my live conference. When I gave him that mic, it just created it was just, oh, what have I done? He was such a docile, quiet chap before then. Anyway, well, look, time has beaten us. Thank you so much, you two, for your input. It is a positive. I think it's great. The fact we're talking about this and that the tide is changing, I think it has moved into a good direction. And we've said it a few times, haven't we, Gary, on the podcast, that it sounds weird for all the people, and there are so many people continuing to suffer because of COVID-19, and it's an awful scenario, but there's also positive things that come out of it in a weird type of way. And one of these things is the increase in communication and the blurring of lines and just people getting on a bit more. And when you're all faced with a similar problem, you tend to talk more, don't you, rather than being competitive and not talking to each other. So hopefully we can continue and make it something positive. So I appreciate you two and the great work you're doing. Jem, if people want to contact you, what's the best way at the moment? If people listen to this, they want to contact you?
I do have a website. It's jemmaoliver.com. It's work in progress, but Twitter normally, probably Gem Oliver, or just throw me a message on the group. And you're quite good at sharing whenever you do I can always tell when you do your podcast at 8 o'clock on the Tuesday, because we get an influx of members into the Facebook group. So thank you for that. And it is a lovely space, as we said, and that is. You know, I'm very proud of it, and it is self-sufficient and self-running. It's an open space for that reason, as a support network, and long may it continue, because it can evolve in the right way, I think. So
yeah, we'll make sure that all gets put into the show notes if people want to contact Jem, and also links. If people haven't checked out the Physio Therapist Support Group, then it's well worth checking out Facebook. We'll make sure a link of that goes into the notes on our webpage. And Andy, if people have listened to you and like what they've said, what they've heard, what's the best way of contacting you?
Yeah, so certainly LinkedIn, just Andy Hosgood on LinkedIn, or our Elevate Your Clinic. So on all of the social media, it's at Elevate Your Clinic. We're on Instagram and all those, and then they can just see what we're up to and they can reach out to us.
Fantastic. And as far as the STA goes, Gary, you're still occasionally talking to people, are you, during the day? What did you say, 30 today? It's just...
Yeah, about that, yeah. And today was an easy day. Yesterday was a hard day for me, because I don't know, but my brain wasn't functioning properly, and I found, you know, myself getting a bit stressed with the amount of talking that I was doing. I don't usually need an excuse to chatter away, but yesterday I just wanted to lie down in the dark room for some reason. But Ben Mace Crossley, I will come back to you on your point. I'll direct message you and arrange to schedule a call to discuss that. And I'll also make some notes in this. But yeah, Jem and Andy, if you want anything putting in our members forums, you know, I'll get Matt to add your contact details in there. So when you link to this as well. So thank you very much for giving up your time. Do appreciate it.
Right, guys, thank you very much. Right, just to let you know that next week, next Tuesday, same time and place, 8 o'clock UK time, we'll be back. I'm going to be talking to my guest is going to be Dr. Amy M. Bender, who is Director of Sleep Science at Cerebra in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. She'll be talking live from Canada. I'll be talking live from Menorca. Yeah, I know, unless it goes red or something weird happens in the next few days, but that's what I'm going to be talking from, a hotel room in Menorca. Good, I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, so do join us for that. Obviously, we'll be talking about the importance and relevance of sleep with regards to sport and working with sporting athletes. And Dr. Amy Bender is a huge resource on that, so do join us for that, 8 o'clock. And in the meantime, right, thanks, guys. Thanks, Andy, Gemma, Gary. Have a lovely evening.
thanks, everyone.
And thanks, everyone who joined us. Take care.
I see you. Take care.